I can best explain it by giving to you the analogy between nuclear waste and radiation and cigarette smoking. And all that radioactivity that is in your garden or in your house, that surrounds you in your everyday life, gives you radiation each and every day of your life. And it is a health hazard to you equivalent to 5 puffs of a cigarette every week. I myself am not a smoker, but I observe there are approximately 20 puffs in every cigarette. So 5 puffs of a cigarette is 1/4 of a cigarette per week, or if you wish, 1 cigarette per month. And that is the scale of the risk which you are faced with by the radioactivity that is in your garden. We can actually analyze that a little bit more. We can actually break that down into its component parts. And the potassium gives you a risk equivalent to 1 puff per week. The thorium, a risk equivalent to 1 puff per week. And the uranium, a risk of 3 puffs per week, mostly because of the radon and the radium it creates. That's a very small hazard to your life. It's not something you will worry about, at least not something you should worry about. We know a great deal about radiation. We know that about of every 1,000 deaths in the United Kingdom, 250 are due to cancer, and 1 of those might be due to background radiation. The other 249 are due to chemical effects, biological effects, diet effects, or other causes unknown. But we are rather confident we know what is due, the upper limit for what is due to radiation. And therefore, although this is a small hazard to your health, I think most people will decide that the health risk from the radioactivity in your garden is small. Small enough so that you can enjoy your garden throughout your lifetime. And in that lifetime, the CEGB has the obligation to supply you with electricity. On average, everyone in the United Kingdom uses 300,000 units of electricity in his or her lifetime. And I want you to do a thought experiment with me and imagine that all of that electricity comes from nuclear power. We'll examine other possibilities later on. Now, as you know, nuclear power must produce nuclear waste. And therefore, if you are going to have nuclear power at all, you have got to produce several kinds of waste. And this picture shows you what they are. There is low-level waste, which comes from both the power station and the reprocessing plant. There is short-lived intermediate-level waste that comes only from the power station. There is long-lived intermediate-level waste, which comes from the reprocessing plant. And finally, there is the high-level waste that contains 99% of all the fission product activity. That, of course, also comes from the reprocessing plant. You have no need to remember these names. I will just ask you to remember that there are simply 4 types, because I am going to discuss them all one by one. Let us therefore begin by looking at low-level nuclear waste. And let us examine how much low-level nuclear waste is produced by providing electricity to you during your lifetime, assuming that that electricity comes entirely from nuclear power. Actually, low-level waste comes not just from the nuclear industry, it also comes from hospitals, general industry, research laboratories, etc. And but that's altogether adds up to about 16 litres per person per lifetime. Low-level waste is typically rubber gloves, paper, tissues, broken instruments, all kinds of trash. Many of it is not actually radioactive at all, but there's a chance it might be radioactive. It is simpler to classify it as low-level waste rather than go through an extensive checking process. I've shown you a picture of it on the slide. Let us now actually have a look at it. This is not pretend nuclear waste. This is real, low-level nuclear waste. Rubber gloves, Kleenex tissues. That's about all that's in there in that particular sample. It varies a lot from sample to sample. Let us switch on the counter. There is the background counts that you've heard before, and let us detect the radioactivity of this material. So that's somewhat larger than the fertilizer. Not a lot larger, maybe a factor of 5, maybe a factor of 10. Not a lot different. Certainly nothing like the uranium or the thorium I showed you. As I mentioned to you before, the public says, NIMBY, not in my backyard. Put it anywhere you like, but don't put it in my backyard. And I have to reply, why not? Why not? Why not put it in your backyard? Of course, I don't actually propose to do that. I can look after it much better than that. But since you feel strongly about it and you're determined not to have it in your backyard, I take that as a challenge. And I want you to do a thought experiment with me. Why not put it in your backyard? That's an intellectual challenge. Let's see if it actually matters to you. Therefore, let's, in our mind, in our imagination, pretend that the low-level waste that is produced by us in making electricity through your lifetime is delivered to you on your 60th birthday for you to put into your backyard, namely in your garden. Will it matter? Well, let's examine it. Here is the young lady from Nirex coming along on your 60th birthday with your share of low-level nuclear waste. You'll see it in amounts in a small attaché case. And we now invite you to bury it in your garden. We don't expect you to do a big, difficult job. Let's bury it in the top meter of your garden. Just spread it around. You'd best grind it up a bit. You don't want a lot of rubber gloves and tissue paper there, so grind it up and spread it around. We are only doing this in our thoughts. If you did that, we can then assess what is the risk of that material compared to the risk of the material that's in your garden already. And that sum is actually an easy sum because we know the toxic potential of all these radioactive materials. And this picture gives you the relative numbers. And the risk from the low-level waste is about 1/20,000th of the risk from the material that is in your garden, in the top surface of your garden. So the potential health risk from inhaling that radioactivity is trivial compared to the material that's there already. And that is as though even if we distribute it and actually give it to you and actually put it in your garden. Which of course is not what we're going to do. We actually can do much better than that.